Alright, a very good morning to everyone. A very good afternoon to everyone who is joining in for this noontime session. Today we're taking yet another look at one of our practice papers for today for English. So before I begin, it'd be good if I can get everyone in. Welcome. We're taking a look at yet another English paper. Okay. So before we get started, perhaps it's best if I can give some indication or perhaps some introduction to what we'll be taking a look at for today. Today we're taking a look at P5 end of year paper. Okay, so this will be of interest to all our upper primary viewers, as well as viewers who are interested in brushing up on your language fundamentals. This paper comes from a Primary 5 end of year paper in 2023. From Maha Bodhi School. This paper was chosen because I think it serves a very good barometer, very good indicator of the standard of papers we see across the board from many schools over the past few years. Across multiple schools, we start seeing a trend in terms of difficulty, a trend in terms of setting more difficult papers, and this English paper over here is no exception. In fact, this is one of the harder papers that have been set over the years, so let's take a look at how do we go about solving today's paper. We'll start off today with Grammar MCQ. Grammar MCQ will comprise 10 different MCQ questions. You are supposed to fill in the blank with the most appropriate option among the 4 options given. Along the way, if you have any questions, feel free to, or you think you have the answer to the question, please feel free to drop them in the chat if you think you have the right answer. So let's get started with question 1. Question 1 over here. Mother blank cookies all morning for the charity drive. Mother blank cookies all morning for the charity drive. Okay. So how should we go about solving this question? Okay. In this case, we'll take a look at some important keywords in our question over here. We see all morning. Okay, so this tells us this is present tense, or rather present perfect, right? Because this is an action that has been done before in the continuous tense. Present perfect in the continuous tense. So among the 4 options, the ones that are in present perfect tense for continuous verbs are options 3 and options 4. So we can eliminate options 1 and 2 first because they do not fit the right tense. Okay. We're looking at tense. Now let's look at subject. Okay, subject over here we have mother. Mother being used to indicate the verb. Okay. So mother, as we know, is just one person, it's singular. Or rather, she is singular. Okay. So between options 3 and 4, has is used for singular, have is used for plural, multiple people. But in this case, we're just focusing on one person for today, mother. Hence, the answer is option 3, has been baked. Any questions? So perhaps just to get things rolling with just a slightly simpler question for this question. Let's proceed with question 2. Pat will travel to China, blank she asked Mrs. Ong. So in this case here, Mrs. Ong is asking if Kat will be traveling to China in the future. when you come across questions on reported speech like this, right, dialogue, a very useful tip that can help you answer this question is to remove the dialogue tag and remove the quotation mark. So what you can do, okay, remove Mrs. Ong from the picture over here, remove the quotation marks, treat this as a sentence by itself. Okay, Pat will travel to China, blank. How should you go about solving a question like this? In this case, this is what is known as a tag question. It starts off with a main statement at the front, followed by a tag at the end. Okay. This tag has two parts. We have a verb and we have a subject. In this case here, the subject is the same as the main statement, pet, right? So the subject over here should be pet. Okay. And that is identified in all our options over here. We have pet, right? She. So all these options are correct for subject. Normally it's not testing subject. Normally this question tests for your verb. Okay. This is the point of interest for this question usually. How do we go about solving for the proper verb to use over here? Two rules to keep in mind. The first rule, it must be a verb in the same tense. Must be a verb in the same tense. We're looking at will travel over here. Okay. So that's the tense we're looking at. In this case here being present tense, right? Will. The present tense of will is will. So off the top of our heads, we can already eliminate options 3 and 4. Why? Because options 3 and 4 use would. Would over here is the past tense of will. It is in a wrong tense, right? Wrong tense. So we eliminate options 3, options 4. Now we narrow it down to options 1 and 2. Both are in the correct tense. The second rule to obey, it is a verb in the opposite action. What do I mean by opposite action over here? Look at our verb in our main statement. Our verb is will. Yes, will travel. So what is the opposite of will? The opposite of will is will not, right? Will not travel. So we need to find a verb that has the meaning of will not. Okay. And with that, we can safely conclude that our answer over here will be won't, right? Because won't is the contraction of will not. Okay. Alright, and with that, we have found our answer. Any questions? So this question can be particularly tricky if you're not familiar with the steps to solve it. So please take this question down, right? Either on the writing materials, on a spare piece of foolscap rough paper, but in a notebook as well. Okay, a pretty tricky question and quite a common question as well. Okay, so please learn how to answer this question. Question 3. Neither Paul or his classmates blank the project that was due yesterday. Okay. Alright, so now I'll turn it over to you in the view. For those in the live stream over here, which answer do you think solves question 3? Which is the answer for question 3? Okay, I see some answers in the chat over here. Some viewers have managed to put in their answer. How about the rest? Do you agree with the answers here? Which option do you think should be used to answer question 3? Okay, so let's go about trying to answer this question. What rule should we follow, right? In this case here we have was due yesterday. Was due yesterday tells us that this project was supposed to have been completed yesterday, okay? So completed, past tense. So with that, we can safely eliminate options 3, options 4, because this act of completion should have been done in the past, right? So it should have been completed. Now, do we use has or do we use have? We use has if you're referring to Peter. We use have, plural, if you're referring to his classmates over here. In this case here, which one should take precedence? For this question, you have to follow the proximity rule, whichever is nearest. Okay. So by proximity, whichever is the nearest to the blank, that is the subject you should take reference from over here. Since Peter's classmates is nearer to the blank, we use them as the subject over here, and this subject is plural. Okay. Thus the option is option 2, have completed. Have because it's plural. So for those that got it right, well done. For those that struggle to get this right, no worries, don't be discouraged, because this is something that you can learn from. Okay? When you come across neither nor or questions in the form of either or, when you come across a question in either of these two forms, always use the subject that is closer to the blank to take reference from as singular or plural. Any questions? Okay, so for those that got it right, you can give yourself a pat on the back for doing a job well done. Question 4. Harry is going blank, a difficult time, and needs our help. This is a preposition question. Preposition usage. So which is the correct preposition over here to form a phrasal verb with going? Among these 4 prepositions, which should be used to form a single phrasal verb with going? Yep, I see some active respondents in the live stream, in the chat. How about the others? Do you agree? How do we use each of these verbs over here to form a preposition or the phrasal verb with going? In this case here, it should be using going through. To go through is to undergo or to experience a difficult time. Okay. To go through is to undergo or to experience. On to question 5. Larry will join us for the movie. Blank, he has to attend his enrichment class. Okay. So let's take a look how we should identify this question over here. Has to attend his enrichment class, will join us for the movie. So joining us for the movie over here is the rule. Larry will join us for the movie, except in the condition or on the circumstance that he has to attend his enrichment class. Okay. So this is the exception over here to the rule that he will join us for the movie. In this case over here, which conjunction is being used to indicate an exception to the rule? You're looking for a conjunction that serves as a conditional, to introduce a condition for then joining the movie. Okay, I see some responses in the chat. Do you agree? Do you agree with some of the answers here? In this case here, because you're introducing a conditional over here that provides an exception, the exception should be introduced with unless. Larry will join us unless he has to attend his enrichment class. Are there any questions? Okay. So for the first set of 5 questions, I wouldn't say they are particularly tricky so far compared to the next set of 5 questions, but what I want to bring everyone's attention to is question 2. Okay, question 2 can be pretty difficult to get the answer to, so please be careful as you go about trying to solve this question. Alright, moving onwards. Question 6. Okay. Hi, I'm new. Can I explain why question 2 it's won't? Okay, good. Thank you very much for the clarification. Question 2 is won't. Let's look at question 2. We start off. Pat will travel to China blank, asked Mrs. Ong. Okay. So when you come across grammar questions with a speech inside, an easy way to focus on what's important is to take away the dialogue tag, remove the quotation marks, focus only on what's inside the dialogue text as its only statement. Okay, Pat will travel to China blank. Okay, so let's reach this step first over here. Just focus on the sentence inside the quotation marks. Next, break down this sentence into 2 parts, before and after the comma. Before the comma is the main statement over here. Okay, the main statement that exists by itself as a sentence. What follows after the comma is a question tag. This question tag will be comprised of a verb and a subject. The subject over here corresponds with the subject in the main sentence, which is Pat. Okay, same subject, Pat, Pat. Okay. And all 4 options over here refer to Pat, so no issue over here. Okay. What this question commonly tests students is to replace the verb. What should fill the verb in your question tag? To fill in the verb, you need to satisfy 2 conditions. Okay. 2 conditions to satisfy. First condition, it must be in the same tense as your verb in the main statement. Okay. So looking back at the main statement, our tense over here, will travel. Will is in the present tense, right? So we need to keep it in the present tense. Hence, we eliminate option 3 and 4 because options 3 and 4 use would. Okay, would is in the past tense. There is a change of tense. That is not what we want. So we eliminate them from our consideration. We just stick to options 1 and 2, will and won't for the present tense. Second condition we need to keep in mind, it needs to be the opposing action. Okay? In this case here, the action in the main statement is will. The opposite of will is will not, right? Will and will not. Okay? So we look for an answer that carries the idea of will not in the same tense. Hence, from the two options over here, the only one that covers will not is won't, right? Because won't is the contraction of will not. Hence, we select won't she, option 2, as our answer. Okay. Is that clear? Okay. Yeah, so you can say this step is a bit long-winded. It takes me a very long-winded way to explain it, but it's important that we break down the steps very clearly such that in the future we can make it a habit to answer this question quickly. Okay, this question shows up in most, if not all, papers. It's likely to show up in PSLE as well for P6 viewers. Alright, so make sure you're able to answer this question in the future following these two steps. Okay, two very clear steps. Same tense, opposite action. Same tense, opposite action. Okay, so you want to take a screenshot, take a picture, or to note this down in your notebook, feel free to go ahead and do so that you can tackle this question in the future following this method. Okay, on to question 6 to 10. Question 6 to 10 are slightly hard, slightly more difficult, but let's see how to answer them. Okay. Question 6. While Ali was admiring the scenery, a pickpocket blanked his wallet. While Ali was admiring the scenery, a pickpocket blanked his wallet. So this is pretty tricky in terms of verb tense and in terms of verb form, right? Let's start off with while. We use while to indicate two actions happening at the same time. While is used to indicate two actions happening at the same time. What are the two actions? Was admiring and the act of stealing over here in the second half of the sentence. Okay. So since they are happening at the same time, right, that tells us that they are both in the same tense. Does that make sense to everyone? Because they are happening at the same time, they should be in the same tense. If they are both, they should both be present, both be future, both be past. Okay, they must match the tense. So far, any questions? Does this make sense? Okay, so now in order to answer the tense over here, we need to take reference from the tense over here. Was admiring. Was admiring is in your past tense, right? Past tense. So that means the blank over here must also be in the simple past tense. Okay. And hence your option is option 1, stole. Okay. Okay, so well done for 𝗪𝗧𝗪. They got the right answer. Okay. For complex tiger, I'm not sure if that's the blank you're answering. But also I think you got the right concept over here, which is the simple past tense. Okay, so well done for getting the right answers for our viewers. Question 7. I take my vitamins daily to prevent myself from blank a cold. So which should be the correct blank over here? For those that got it right earlier, what do you think it is? For those that got it wrong, this is a chance to redeem yourself. What do you think is the correct answer here? Okay, some options over here. Thank you from, is there a swan? Right, we use catching a cold, correct? Catching a cold, that means when you're contracting an illness, contracting a sickness. Okay, prevent myself from catching a cold. Question 8. Jay was in the laboratory when he saw his classmate blank the beaker. Jay was in the laboratory when he saw his classmate blank the beaker. Okay, perhaps before we move on to question 8 first, let's revisit question 6. There's a question from 𝗪𝗫𝗡𝗘𝗖𝗧. In reference to question 6, was admiring is past continuous? Was admiring is past continuous here, while stole is simple past. It's not the same tense. Okay, good question over here. Was admiring is past continuous, while this refers to past simple past tense is not the same. Okay. Yes, was admiring over here is past continuous tense. You identified it correctly. Okay. However, you're looking at two different actions over here. Continuous refers to the act of admiration, because admiration is not a single act that takes place at one point in time. It's a lot over a period of time. It's admiring the scenery. However, stealing takes place in a instant, right? Just one instance of stealing. Okay. Both take place in the past, but continuous versus simple refers to how long the duration of this act was taking place. In this case here, admiring took place before, during, and after the act of stealing. So stealing took place over one instant, admiring took place throughout the act of stealing. So it still remains in continuous tense. As a result, from our four options over here, you still default to the past tense component of the verb, which is stole. Okay. Does that answer the question? Okay, if that answers the question, you can give a thumbs up. Or if you're still confused, you can put a thumbs down or maybe a sad face, so I know that maybe I can go into greater detail here. Okay. As we take some time to consider and pause and consider this question, okay, I'd like to thank the viewers for including your comments over here. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to drop them in the chat over here, alright? Please do not feel afraid of seeming as if you do not have the right answer. Don't point out they're not technically the same tense, but thanks. Yes, you're correct, they're not technically the same tense over here, but because referring to two actions that are taking place over different durations, or over different spans of time, you might be more precise over here. They're happening at the same time, but the length of which the action was being carried out is slightly different, hence the slight difference in how its tense is being carried out in the continuous versus simple. Okay, yeah, so thank you very much for a very astute point about how the tense is not exactly the same. That is the case over here, because the actions also do not tend to carry out over the same span of time. Okay. Question 8. Jay was in the laboratory when he saw his classmate blank the beaker. So maybe this is something that is quite relevant to question 6 over here, looking at verbs of the same tense. In the laboratory when he saw his classmate over here. So does that mean this tense over here should be in the past tense? This is something that maybe viewers can chime in. Does this mean that this should also be in the past tense? It seems like it, right? Was, saw, both of these are verbs in the past tense. Okay. However, if you default to that line of logic, you are missing out a very crucial step, which is saw over here is what is known as a verb of perception. Okay. A verb of perception. Okay, so this is a pretty big word. What is a verb of perception? Okay, in simpler terms, a verb of perception just refers to verbs that are referring to your 5 senses. Okay. You see, you smell, you hear, you taste. These are all verbs of perception, right? To relate to your 5 senses. When you have a verb that comes after your verb of perception, it is followed by a verb in its base form. Okay. When you come across a verb of perception, it must be followed by a verb in its base form. Okay. So going back to a blank over here, we look at the act of breaking the beaker. In this case here, the base form of break is break. Okay. So that would be option 1 in question 8. Okay. Is that clear? Are there any questions or clarifications that we have for this question? Okay. So when you have a verb of perception, always follow it with a verb in the base form. Along the way, if you have any questions, please feel free to raise them. Do not feel afraid or feel intimidated to raise them in the chat, alright? Over here, we're all learning together. We're all trying to make sure we clarify any doubt that we might have. Who knows, a question you might have, others might have it as well, right? So by giving it a voice, by putting it out in the chat, perhaps others are able to learn from the experience as well. Okay? Question 9. Mary's close group of friends blank for her at the courtyard just now. Okay. Just now, a clear indicator of time. Okay. The time over here tells us that it took place in the past, just now, right? So looking for verb in the past tense, we eliminate is, eliminate are, because is and are both present tense. We look at was and were. Okay. We are doing the weighting in the past. Now we are looking between was and were. Do we use singular or plural? Or plural. Okay. Which should be the correct subject form over here? In this case, we see closer to the blank, we have friends, right? Friends in the multiple. So does that mean that it's plural? Not so fast, right? We read a few words before it. We see Mary's close group of friends. Group over here. Multiple groups? No, just a single group of friends. Okay. So in this question over here, group is being used as a collective noun to refer to her group of friends. A collective noun. And this collective noun is used in the singular. Okay. Hence, we use option 3. Mary's close group of friends was waiting for her at the courtyard just now. So this can be pretty tricky because you're tested on 2 rules over here, both tense as well as collective nouns. Okay, so be careful for questions like this. You're being tested on 2 aspects of language. Finally, question 10. Peter did not have blank homework today. He only had to finish 1 piece of math worksheet. Okay. We have 4 quantifiers over here. How should we use them to answer the question? Perhaps this is a chance for us in the live stream, in the live chat, drop in your answer. Which do you think best fits the blank? much. Yes, you have an answer from coming in from, right, much. So how should we go about solving this question over here? Looking at our subject, in this case our subject being homework. Okay, so homework is being used, is what we need to quantify over here. When do we use much? When do we use many? Many is used for countable nouns. Can you count homework? Not quite. You can count individual pieces of homework. I have one piece of math worksheet, I have two pieces of math worksheet. But homework as a whole is referred to a general term describing the general homework that you have. Okay? Uncountable. Other examples of uncountable nouns, you also have, let's say, money. Money is uncountable. You can refer to many coins, many dollars, but money as a whole referring to a general group of items, it's uncountable. Same with furniture. You can have one chair, two tables, but furniture as a whole refers to the general items that you have. Okay, so the general group is uncountable. So just like homework, money and furniture, they all come under the uncountable category. So in this case here, many would not be suitable. How about any? If you do not have any homework, that means you do not have any homework, you have nothing at all. But is that true within the context of the sentence over here? Is it true that Peter does not have any homework at all? Not quite, right? He only had to finish one piece of homework. Yes, it's only one piece of worksheet, only one piece of math worksheet, but it is still some, it's not none at all. Okay, so in this case here, this doesn't fit in with the context of the sentence. So between little and much, which should you use over here? He did not have much homework. Okay, so that fits in with the context or the meaning of the sentence over here. He does not have a lot of homework. He just has one piece of math worksheet. Okay. So for those that have gotten it right, well done for getting the right answer. Are there any questions? Okay, so with that, we've come to the end of the grammar section MCQ. But if you have any questions or if you still like to practice grammar, do not fret. Later on in the live stream, we'll be going through the grammar close passage, alright? So there you get to flex your grammar skills again for those that have done well. For those that are perhaps not at the level that which they want to be at, don't worry, you get another chance to redeem yourself and to improve later on. Okay. So let's move ahead now to vocab. For your vocab section, you also have 10 MCQ questions. However, they take a slightly different format. For vocab, you have a total of 10 questions. They're split along 5 questions of 2 types. The first question you get is fill in the blanks. It's exactly the same as what you've seen in grammar just now, right? You'll be given a sentence with a blank in the middle. You'll be asked to fill in the blank with the appropriate option among the 4 options given. Okay, so there'll be 5 questions of those kinds. The second set of 5 questions will be substitution questions. Substitution questions will be asked to replace the underlined word in a sentence with one of the options given. So you'll be given a sentence, one of the words in it is underlined. It can be a noun, it can be a verb, a word in any form. Okay? It might even be a short phrase or a short description over here. It's underlined. You'll be asked to replace the underlined word or phrase with the most suitable option in the options given. Okay, so there'll be 5 of those questions as well. Okay, so slightly different from grammar. Let's take a look with the first fill in the blank question. The basketball finals had to be blank to a later date due to the storm. So what we have over here are 4 phrasal verbs. What are phrasal verbs? Phrasal verbs are phrases or short sequence of words that are meant to be read together as a single action or a single verb. We see 4 common phrasal verbs over here: to put up, put off, put out, and to put away. How do we use them in a sentence? Okay. Firstly, to put up is to tolerate. Okay. For example, I have to put up with my parents nagging to do my homework and to do my revision, right? So to put up is to tolerate. To put off is to delay, or to procrastinate, or to postpone. Okay. I put off doing my homework until I finished my lunch, or until I finished my dinner. Okay, so to put off is to delay something. Okay, let me go through the 4 phrasal verbs first, then I will answer some of the questions in the chat. The third option, put out is quite special. It depends on the context, right? If it's the context of a fire, it's to extinguish a fire or a flame. Okay. For example, the firefighters put out the raging inferno. Okay, so that to extinguish the fire. Or it can also be used to display a sign or to display an advertisement. Okay. For example, the restaurant put out a sign advertising its newest promotion. So put out can be quite different depending on the context of the sentence. It isn't just one fixed way of using the phrasal verb. And finally, put away. To put away is to keep. Okay. At the start of a test in class, your teachers will tell you, put away your other materials, leave your writing materials on your desk, right? So to keep away, to keep aside. Okay. Now a question from Wombat Tim. How many phrasal verbs do we need to learn? This is a pretty tricky question for me to answer. It's tricky because there is an easy answer, and the easy answer is there isn't a fixed number. Learning phrasal verbs is the same as learning vocab words. They're asking me how many words do I need to learn the vocab of. The answer is there isn't a fixed number, right? You learn as many as you can so that you can learn how to apply it based on the question. In the same vein, phrasal verbs, there's no hard limit on how many you need to learn. It is best to learn as many as you can, or to be familiar at least. You don't have to know the exact meaning, but to be familiar with their usage. Okay? So perhaps a better question to ask over here is, how do I learn, or where do I come across phrasal verbs, right? That gives us a better understanding of how that I can apply them in the questions. In this case here, a good way to learn phrasal verbs would be not just reading your storybooks, but to read current affairs, to read news articles. Okay? News articles in the Straits Times or your newspaper of choice, in a magazine even, can be a very useful way for you to be able to identify the use of phrasal verbs. So in this case over here, I cannot provide a hard and fast number over here, an exact number on the number of phrasal verbs you need to learn. But what I can provide over here is a useful method, a useful and reliable method to start picking up these phrasal verbs in your everyday speech. Okay? So this is perhaps something that we can think about moving forward. Focus about learning less on a goal. Focus less on the number of words you need to learn, the number of questions you get right. But try to shift your attention towards how can I incorporate learning English, learning the language as part of my daily routine over here. Okay, so pay closer attention when you read the news. You can start with watching the news, reading the subtitles, but move towards reading it as well. Okay, there's a different neurological response when you read the words and you comprehend them within your brains. Okay, so just be mindful of that difference. Instead of passively listening, reading the words. Okay. Yes. Yes, thank you very much for the clarification. So going back to the question over here, among the 4 options that best describes what we have over here, we're looking at the basketball finals being pushed to a later date, right? It hasn't been cancelled. It's not cancelled, but rather postponed to a later date. And thus, the correct answer is option 2, put off. Okay, so for the students that have got, the viewers that have gotten it right, well done for getting the right answer. For the viewers that have gotten it wrong, don't be discouraged. This is a chance for you to also learn how these other phrasal verbs that can be learnt. And perhaps for the viewer that asked about how many you need to learn for Wombat, well, today you've just learned 4, right? You already learned 4. And if you were already here for the grammar section earlier, we had go through in question 4. Okay, so go through is also a phrasal verb, to undergo or to experience a question. Okay. So actually just today, within the first half an hour and so of our live stream, we've already covered 5 phrasal verbs. Okay, so you can see having this constant experience of being on the lookout for phrasal verbs in your daily life allows you to have a better understanding of how you can use them and how you can apply them moving forward. Does that answer our questions over here? Okay, good. Question 6, I'll keep before put away. Yes, perhaps to answer a certain clarification over here, keep means to put. Thank you very much for the clarification from Liberal. Again, 𝗪𝗂𝗶𝗶𝗆 very keeping me on my toes as well, making sure that I have the right explanations. Yes, I agree with you. That's what I got from Oxford Dictionary as well when I did my lesson prep for this live stream. That was the definition that I got from Oxford Dictionary as well, about the difference between keep and put away as a nuance. But we need to keep in mind, okay, perhaps to lend some of your language, your verbiage over here. Keep in mind that questions we are phrasing over here is not meant for a global audience. Our questions are posed towards our P5 students, our 11-year-olds in Singapore. So a lot of their language comprehension and the ability they are taking to the test to understand these questions are keeping with the Singaporean context in mind. They might not fit the most accurate and most up-to-date Oxford English language, and that is why we are testing a lot of their fundamentals on this paper over here. Okay, so it's important that we keep a very clear set of mind that while the grammar rules and vocab rules they are doing for definitions are based on the Oxford English standards, at the same time we want to ensure we set papers that are reasonable and realistic for our students' language abilities. Okay. So this can be a bit tricky also. How do we vary questions across different locales and different language systems? So perhaps this is a point that is best discussed offline. Let's focus back on the question over here. Science fiction and mystery are some book blank that you can borrow from the library. We have 4 options to choose from over here. Some are more specific than others, some are better fitted within the context. Which should we use over here? Okay. Some quick answers coming in. How about the rest? Do you agree or do you disagree with some of the answers over here? Okay. So looking at books, science fiction, we have mystery. These are referring to book genres. Okay, so thank you very much for the responses from Inma as well. I think it's our first response in the live stream, so good job getting the right answer. Okay, what are genres? Genres are not just restricted to books, we also have genres for books, genres for films, even for television series. What are genres? Genres refers to a set of similar themes and concepts that are commonly brought about these mediums. For example, science fiction, mystery, horror, comedy. Right, these are some genres that are pretty common across books, films, and television. Levels, groups, and classes do not fit the accuracy needed within the question. levels and groups do not really quite capture the idea. Levels do not imply a certain hierarchy or a certain order. For example, in your school you have the levels of P1 to P6, right? But that isn't really the levels that we're looking at over here. There isn't really an order, fixed order to science fiction, to mystery, to horror, to comedy, right? So maybe not quite what we were looking at. Groups and classes. Groups aren't really used in this verbiage over here as well. It's not specific enough. Is there a specific name for these groups of books? Yes, they are called genres, okay? So not specific enough within this context. And classes over here, classes don't really use it for literature. Classes are used more in science, right? You think about science, you have different classes of the animal kingdom, okay? So not quite what you use for books. Question 13. Within seconds from the explosion, the wooden hut was blank in flames. Okay. We have 4 verbs over here that are quite similar in meaning. However, they differ slightly in nuance and application. Okay. Which do we think is the closest match for the blank? Engulfed. Can I see engulfed coming in? How about the others? Do you agree it's engulfed? For the verbs, let me start from the bottom. To submerge. To submerge something is to put it underwater. Keep something underwater. So that is the medium in which you use the term submerge. This isn't really quite the case over here. It's flames, right? So a direct contrast of it. So not quite what we're looking for over here. To consume. To consume is to eat something, or to be overwhelmed by something. For example, while studying for my exams, I was consumed by stress. I was consumed by anxiety. However, very important over here, take note, consume needs to be followed up by the verb, by the preposition by, to be consumed by. Okay, who is the one doing the consumption? Between covered and engulfed, they are pretty similar in meaning. However, to engulf is to cover completely. Okay. It is of greater intensity. Cover is neutral, but engulfed has a greater intensity associated with it for the connotation. Looking at our blank over here, we see it's followed by the preposition in, so that means we cannot use consume, because consume needs to be followed by the preposition by. Okay. Thus, between covered and engulfed, the one that best suits the intensity conveyed within the question, but the explosion is engulfed, right? Because an explosion you will associate it with a very strong intensity of flames that follows after it. Okay. So I think this question, submerge, will be an easy elimination. The difficulty comes in differentiating between these two, and also differentiating consumed from engulfed, right? And the difference lies in the use of preposition that follows after it. Okay, so this is the tricky part for question 13 that you should take note of. Question 14. Even the doctors were surprised by David's sudden blank of fever and could not find the cause. Okay, so we have 4 words over here, which best suits the idea of the beginning of a fever. The beginning or start of fever. Okay, I saw answers coming in. Diagnosis, good. How about the others? Diagnosis? Okay, so let's think about the word diagnosis. What does it mean to get a diagnosis? A diagnosis over here is delivered by a doctor regarding their professional opinion of your illness. Professional opinion from delivered by a doctor. For example, after going into the clinic for a checkup, the doctor diagnosed me with influenza or the flu. Okay, so there's a doctor's professional opinion based on their medical training, based on their qualifications. However, we're looking not so much at the doctor's diagnosis. In fact, even here the doctors were surprised. If the doctors were surprised, that means they were not expecting the beginning of the illness, so it does not really mean that they had their opinion that it was going to begin or start, right? So not quite diagnosis over here. We are looking more towards onset. A sudden onset, the sudden beginning of an illness or a sickness over here. Outlook. Outlook refers to the forecast. For example, if you contract a really bad fever, the outlook might be grim because you will not recover quickly. Okay, so the forecast will be grim. Finally, question 15 might be tricky. So let's take a look at question 15. Alright. Okay, if you got it, if you did not get the right answer, again, don't be discouraged. Especially for question 14, a lot of these terms here are quite technical in nature. If you're not familiar with medical terminology, you might get it wrong at times, okay? But more importantly, focus not so much on your wrong answers, but understanding how do you get the right answer in the future. Justin is blank. I wish he would stop harassing me. Okay, we have 4 of what we call idioms over here. What are idioms? Okay. Idioms are common sayings. They are meant to be taken figuratively, not literally. Okay, maybe it's a bit hard to read my handwriting. Heard that enough. Idioms are common sayings that are meant to be taken figuratively. We have 4 idioms over here. How do we use them in a sentence? First one, a piece of cake. A piece of cake is an easy task or an easy feat. Okay. For example, if you're good at English, then this practice paper might be a piece of cake for you, right? It's easy to answer. A thorn in my flesh. Now think about it, if you're holding on to a stem of a rose and you got a thorn in your flesh, how would it feel? It would hurt? Would it be very painful? Not quite. It's more of the hurt intensity of an ant bite, right? It's more irritating, more annoying rather than painful. At the apple of my eye. Someone who is the apple of your eye is someone who is the object of your admiration, the object of your affection. For example, in school, if you have a crush on a classmate, they are the apple of your eye. Affection or admiration. Okay. And finally, to blow your own trumpet is to boast. To exaggerate your own abilities, to hype yourself up, basically. Right? To be boasting. So with these idioms and their definitions in mind, which do you think best captures the idea of Justin harassing me? Harassing, what does harassing mean over here? Okay, good question. What does it mean to harass someone? Legally speaking, an act of harassment is any action being taken in a way that causes or induces stress or anxiety in the receiving party. Okay. Action that causes harm, and even if it's not harm, it could also cause stress. Okay. That would be a form of harassment. For example, if you're walking outside of the MRT station, a person approaches you and asks you, "Hey, can I sign up for this? Can I take a brochure like this?" And you keep refusing them, but they keep following after you. that causes you stress, that's a form of harassment. Okay? So in this case here, based on this definition of harassment and our 4 idioms, which of the 4 idioms over here is best used to fill in the blank and to describe Justin? Chen? Yes, perhaps in English, yes, that is one form of harassment, right? I would say 骚扰 is just general harassment. What's boasting? Boasting over here refers to exaggerating your own abilities. For example, you could say, I scored the highest in class, all my classmates could not even match my level, right? So that's to boast on your own abilities, to exaggerate your own strengths. Or I run the fastest in my class, I'm the tallest in my class, so to boast. Okay? To boast your own abilities and your own strengths. That is untrue. Okay? So keeping the ideas in mind, the same can be said for option 2. Okay, so let me show the answer first.